Hey, hello everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Hangout number 82. Yeah, I have a lot to talk about during this Hangout. I'm going to be talking a lot about, well, I will talk a little bit about Julia, the McCann, the fake McCann, Madeleine McCann, but I specifically want to talk about family life, development of psychopathy or narcissism or other issues that may or may not have occurred in her life due to some recent information that I have found or found out. And I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of other things as well. So welcome everybody who's here in the chat room. Thank you for being here. Let's see. I'm not going to go through the whole list, guys. I said hello to everybody. Well, that's interesting. I think I know who that is. Someone related to me. Like, what are you doing here at this time of day? This is not normal for you. I can't believe it. That's my sis, everybody. So don't send her hate mail. No, these are all the good people here in the chat room. You're all fantastic. Alexandra, thank you for saying you can see and hear me. That's fantastic. All right. Ready to go. All right. If you want to be here in the chat room, please do click the link below for Patreon. This is a patron-only chat room. So anybody here is part of Patreon. Join in. There's 8 shows a month that are live that you can participate in. And yeah, do that. And but don't worry, if you're not going to become a patron, all my shows are open to the public, every single one of them, because I want people to learn. They don't have to pay me to learn. They can just come to YouTube and learn. Hopefully YouTube pays me a little bit, so, you know, a little bit, not greatly, but a little bit. All right, to keep me going. And of course, all of you people who support the channel as well. Thank you very much. If you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. Now, let's see what I'm going to talk about. All right. People are saying hi to my sister. Oh, that's so cool. I'm surprised to see you here, although I know you are a patron. So it's nice to have your sister in your corner. Yeah, so she's a great sister, by the way, everybody. Fantastic. So I'm a very, very lucky person. So anyway, what I want to talk about first, because this is a recent development. I want people to understand this. Because some of you know the copyright issues I've been struggling with, that a couple channels, actually more than a couple channels, at least 4 channels, have taken large portions of my videos and put them on their channels. One guy did it in the correct way. I thought he used a couple clips from my channels and then trashed me, which was okay in my opinion. Because he was using a very small amount of something in some different video clips of mine, and he was truly analyzing my statements. So I have found that coming under fair use. But some others have taken incredibly large quantities of one video, which I believe does not come under fair use. And even if you make a comment every once in a while going, oh my gosh, that's amazing, or oh, I agree, that to me is just using somebody else's material. So I did file a copyright violation to YouTube because I think people should be protected. You will never, ever see me use anybody else's videos from another YouTube channel on my channel. You're not going to see me take a whole video of Ken Mains and throw it on my channel and then make comments through it. You'll never see that happen. I'm not going to, this is not going to happen. That's his channel. He does his work. He has a right to put his own stuff on his channel. So, yeah, even though I will sometimes comment about another channel. And then I'll say, oh, go to that person's channel, and I'll even link it and check out their video. I do that all the time. Sometimes you'll see 5 links in my description box to different YouTube videos because I'm going to mention them, but like I say, I got my information from there and go there and check it out. I think it's a very well done, or this is where you can get their opinion. So that I do, but I never put their stuff on my channel because it's not mine, okay? So at any rate, I did file a couple, for the first time in my 2 years, I filed 2 copyright infringements. And what's happened is now one of their videos has gone back up, and that particular person, I'm not going to mention the channel because I just don't want to give them advertising. But they put it up, and they pinned a comment gleefully saying, Pat Brown was wrong. She said it was copyright infringement. It wasn't. It was fair use, and YouTube agrees with me, and that's why she was wrong what she did. And all the people who are her subs are going, oh my God, that's right. She was wrong. No, it wasn't. That's not how things work. And so I'm going to tell you how it works so you can understand when you're dealing with not just channels, when you're dealing with reading books, watching documentaries, a lot of times you are being manipulated and conned. And I want you to understand how this works, because one of the things people do who don't tell you the truth, just shall we say lie, or alter the facts, is that they think you're foolish enough to fall for it. They don't have respect for you. And that's sad, because they should have respect for the people who are spending their money on that channel or spending their time there. I don't think people have to be perfect, and I don't have to agree with their opinions, but I at least think they should be telling the truth and being factual and not just gossiping and saying things that just aren't so. But they believe their people will fall for it, and they do. And so in this particular case, what is being said was that I filed a charge with YouTube, and it failed because I was wrong. It was fair use is what they're claiming. That's not true. What happens is with YouTube, you file a copyright infringement. Then what happened when I filed it is these two I filed, YouTube did not automatically just take them off, because if they did that, they'd be taking everybody's stuff off. They then sent me emails saying, explain why this isn't fair use. I came back and I explained it on the two videos. It then goes to a YouTube team. That YouTube team analyzes it. They look at the videos, they see what I say, they analyze it. And if they agree that it appears to them, I was going to say appears to them, they're not a legal team. It's their platform. If it appears to them it is a copyright infringement, then they take the videos down. Now, having done that, the persons whose videos were taken down, which are actually my videos, but they're on their channel, they have a right to respond. They then respond. Now, mind you, it doesn't cost them anything to respond. They can respond back by saying, this is totally fair use, and this is why it's fair use, and they give their argument. Now, this is not where YouTube analyzes their argument and then makes up their mind between that person and me. No, they already decided I was correct. What happens then is once somebody then fights back, it goes to the next level. They then step out of it because they cannot be the arbitrators of what turns into a legal question at that point. Let me show you an actual email from them so you can understand exactly what happens. YouTube says, we received a counter notification in response to a copyright removal request that you submitted. A counter notification is a legal request for YouTube to reinstate the video that was removed due to copyright removal request. Now, it's a legal request, but it's not, they don't have to hire a lawyer for this. They can just say to YouTube, put it back. All right. You have 10 US business days to reply to this counter notification. Your response must include evidence that you have taken legal action against the uploader to keep the content from being reinstated to YouTube. Usually, evidence would include a lawsuit against the uploader, which names the YouTube URL at issue and seeks a court order to restrain the alleged infringement. I have to send evidence that I have filed a lawsuit against this person. Do you know how much money that costs to do? I have to hire an attorney. Then the attorney has to do their work, and then they have to file the lawsuit against this person. Now, one of the people even had a phony address, but I guess I don't know if you can file it against the URL, but whatever. Not only a phony address, a phony name that doesn't exist. So, but I now have to take literal legal action to keep my video from being put back up on their channel. Now, these two people who both fought back, know very well that they can fight back for no cost. And then if I want to fight back after that, I've got to file a lawsuit. And I'm pretty sure that at least one of them has said they've been hit with this kind of thing before. They know what they're doing. They know that most people, because if they're not huge corporations, don't have the money or the time to waste with all this garbage because somebody took your crap. I mean, in the long run, is it going to harm me that much? No. So is it worth going through with an entire lawsuit? No. So yes, I'm not filing a lawsuit. So they can put the videos back up. But it is not true that the YouTube put the videos back up because I failed to prove that there was this. It's just I failed to file a lawsuit to make it go to the next legal level. And YouTube, I really can't blame YouTube on this because they can agree with me that it was not fair use and pull it off the channel, hoping that that's the end of it. But once the person fights back, and they have to, I guess their lawyers told them they have to allow them that to then allow it to go into actually a court situation. And they're just a company. They're not into fighting the battle for me. And they can't they can't get their lawyers on this and go through all this for me for nothing. So they're just going to say, okay, if you're not willing to go to the next level and file a lawsuit, we're done. Oops. Too bad. And I understand that. Actually, I do understand that from YouTube. There's not much they can do about it. They try. They took the videos down because they agreed with me, or they wouldn't have done that. But they can't fight a legal battle. And it's not worth, these couple channels aren't worth my time to fight a legal battle. But I just want you to understand what happens when these people come out and start lying to their subscribers that this is how it works. It didn't work that way. So, and one other thing they say, which always amuses me, is I don't know why Pat Brown was upset because we were bringing people to her channel. You know, if you're a gossip channel and a grifter channel, I don't want the people that are at your channel. I might like them to leave your channel and go to a better location, but I'm not happy with your channel. I'm okay with you not sending anybody over. Thank you very much. I want people who want to learn something about profiling and crime scene analysis. I don't want people coming here for just a bunch of gossip, okay? And a bunch of falsehoods and all that kind of stuff. Nope, don't want it. So, yeah. So honorable channels, at least honorable toward other YouTube channels, do not take people's work and put it on their channels. I don't care what their excuse is. They don't do it. So I have channels which, say I've never seen them take anybody else's stuff. They might refer to it, but they don't take it. There's a difference between the two of them. So I just wanted to start out with that because I want you to understand this is sometimes the stuff you hear and you don't realize is, this is what's really going on behind the scenes. So I wanted to bring that up. Anyway, Martha says, true crime channels have become very nasty, abusive, cutthroat, and grifter city. You're a rare oasis. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Although, this question, do you think a cease and desist letter would suffice? No, it does not. That's not enough. You have to file a lawsuit to a lawsuit that says they have stolen your work, stolen the copyright. So you can't, it's not that simple. And even if, everything costs money, nothing comes cheap. So you have to find, it's a lot of work and it's usually not worth doing. It just isn't. A decent person out there. I once I got one thing from YouTube that said it wasn't a copyright strike. It was just a warning type of thing. But apparently it was from I had put in my video just a minute of my own interview on Oxygen Channel, one of the documentaries I'd done. It was my own interview. It wasn't somebody else's. I was sitting there. Oxygen didn't like it because they have an automatic thing, I guess, for these big channels to find stuff that even if it's, just 1% of anything, they're going to get you for it. And I took it down. I didn't fight it. I'm like, well, I guess it is theirs, so I was wrong and I never did it again. I learned my lesson. That was like just me for a minute. It's like, okay, but yeah. So I think if somebody objects to you putting their stuff on your channel, you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't be doing it anyway, but you definitely shouldn't do it when they're upset about. Just remove it. So anyway, that's interesting. I know German crime channels who just translate English ones. Also theft. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing the stuff that goes on. It really does. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that up because I find it annoying when, there's not a proper explanation out there. I don't know how many people will hear it, but at least it's here. So anyway, hopefully I'll never have to deal with these people again. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk about was Nicola Bulley, because Nicola Bulley is the woman who went for the dog walk, and she ended up in the river, St. Michael's on Wire, and it was a huge internet sensation, shall we say, and all kinds of nasty stuff came out of that. And anyway, her body was found, and now what I'm hearing from some people is that there's this is Nicola Bulley, by the way, mother of two, and married to a gentleman, have had a family, and walked her dog. And there are reasons to believe that it was an accidental death, but there are people who are claiming it's murder and all kinds of things that don't have any foundation in fact. However, I'm now hearing all kinds of people are sending me stuff. Did you hear this? Did you hear this from the police? Or did you hear this from one of those grifter channels who are just sludging out stuff constantly, like day after day, never letting it go, feeding people this nonsense, which is sick to me because she's been found dead. They have a ruling on it at this point. But there is going to be an inquest, all right? It is going to be the full inquest is going to be held in June of 2023. So we have a few more, let's see, we're April, May. Okay, 2 to 3 months left before we have the full inquest on the case. Now, what am I interested in? And I know many people are interested in this piece of information. It is this. How long had she been dead when she was in the river? Now, a lot of people think that because her body wasn't found by certain searchers for a while, that her body wasn't actually there, that it was put in the river way later. I doubt that, but I would like to know what they've discovered as far as how long they believe her body was in the river, the decomposition and all that. So I'm curious about that, but that has not come out at all at this point. I assume that's going to be part of the full inquest. And this is why I have not commented on the case, because there's nothing new to say. Stop it, wait till the full inquest, and then if there's anything curious there, or there's a final conclusion, things that make sense, or if there's things that don't, that may be the appropriate time to say, I'm going to analyze this, and I have this concern, or I'm confident that now we have the truth. Wait until June. So in my opinion, anybody's talking about anything until June is probably a grifter channel. So stay away from those people. Just stay away. Oh my goodness, stay away. Let's see. So anyway, that was the first one. Wait a minute. What am I going to talk about next? Oh yeah. I'm going to do a whole thing and a little bit about Julia, but I'm going to combine that with two other cases to help understand psychology and what happens within families. So before I go there, I do want to talk about these two things that people asked me about. One is, well, this is just a simple one. We've had a recent mass murder shooting, which was horrific. I will not talk about that case. I never talk about mass murder specific ones because I do not like to give the name or show the face, tell the story of a mass murder, because the reason they kill isn't, no matter what their quote motive is, it's never really the motive. The motive is fame. The motive is their day in the sun. And I fought with the networks for years over doing this. And I stopped doing that a long time ago, ever doing any show like that. But has the media slowed down? No, it hasn't. They just keep promoting this, and that keeps inspiring new mass murderers. But the one thing that I saw happen recently, which I was pleased about, was, I'm not going to give the guy's name, but these are his parents. So he went and killed a bunch of people, and they'd given him a gun, and apparently the school had called up and told them that he was like drawing these very creepy pictures and come and get him. And they didn't. And so personally, I think the school could have done something about it themselves, but they just called the parents. And so the parents are being charged with manslaughter, and as in a sense of aiding and abetting these murders. And I think that's the first time I've seen that happen. I would like to see any juvenile who uses a weapon that the parents gave them or the parents own that was not locked up properly. I want to see the parents go down as a co-conspirator. Because if that happened, we'd have a whole lot less, psychologically disturbed kids accessing weapons from their own homes. It's ridiculous. A parent who knows their kid is sick in the head, and yet they don't stop them from accessing weapons that they own. So I think if you don't do that, you go down with the kid, and I think that might change a lot of things. But we're very slow in the U.S. to make parents responsible for their underage children when they can do something. We see that with small children too, like a parent who leaves a handgun on just in a drawer. It's not, there's only two places a gun should be. It's in a safe or it's on your body. And I don't want to go into a political spiel here on whether you should own guns or not. It's not my point here. And I will eliminate them below. I'm talking about responsibility. A gun is supposed to be on your body or in a safe, two places. If a child can access that because it isn't in one of those two places, then you're responsible for what the child does with it. You go down with them. That's my soapbox for today. And I stand with that. Scarlett says, very true. I agree with your soapbox 100%. Oh, there I am. So, yeah. And this is really unbelievable. Yeah, they picked it out for him. Having known this kid is a whack job. Yeah, he picked it out. Oh, unbelievable. I think it was so outrageous this time. They finally said, okay, we're going to do something about this. So that's just one little one I wanted to bring up. And then the next one, before I go on to the bigger topic, is going to be on Adnan Syed. All right. Now, this is the guy that in Baltimore, Maryland, who was convicted of killing his girlfriend, Heyman Lee. And he was in prison for a couple of decades. And then Serial Podcast got hold of this whole thing and became a famous podcast and made a ton of money. And then this woman on the left, Marilyn Mosby, who I find to be a rather crooked progressive prosecutor, I think she was being charged with illegal acts of her own and was going to be taken to court. So I think as a last ditch, she decided she would go on the side of the public and say that, the prosecution was wrong in even taking Adnan Syed to court because, and this is basically a thing that one of the detectives had written down a name of a couple of possible suspects and didn't share it with the defense, as if a lot of times, people scribble notes and stuff. It doesn't always mean that it's meaningful. So this is her whole claim to, this shouldn't have been charged. And also they did some DNA tests. They said the DNA cleared him. It did not clear him. His DNA just wasn't there on the bottom of a shoe. I mean, but the court, he was found guilty in a court of law. And basically they're going, now they're just saying it. And I'm not real fond of jury, I'm not fond of civilian jury trials, but the civilian jury did find him guilty. And now they're just coming through and going, okay, we'll just toss out their verdict. I mean, they came up with guilt and we're just going to toss it because we're not going to go with the civilian jury system. We're just going to say, nah, let's take it back. So now what happened is, let me find the article on that. Hold on. Okay. His conviction was just reinstated. But before people like me get all excited, it's like, oh my God, sanity has come because there's a new guy in town. This fella, let me come up with his name. I fairly much like this guy. Oh crap! Now I can't find his name. Okay, where'd it go? Hold on. I don't want to. He's our new. Come on, where is it? Okay, Ivan Bates is his name. The guy on the right is Ivan Bates. He is now taken over from Mosby. I like him in that he's a tougher guy on crime. He wants to stop all the crime in Baltimore, which has gotten so bad that, businesses are closing down. People are afraid to go there. Children are being killed. It's a mess. He's like, okay, we got to stop letting everybody off the hook. We got to start being tougher on crime. However, he did say, I don't think Syed is guilty. So I don't know if he's willing to go against the crowd on that, you see, because he's a political animal regardless. I might like him in general, but I'm not too thrilled about that aspect. However, so this thing is happening now. His conviction was reinstated. But does this mean he's going to go back to prison and it's all over? No. That's not what's happening. It says here, Maryland's second highest court on Tuesday reinstated the convictions of Adnan Syed, sending the case back to a Baltimore courtroom and prolonging the legal saga made famous by the Serial podcast. In a split decision, the appellate court of Maryland ruled that the September hearing wiped away Syed's guilty finding in the 1999 killing of Hae-Min Lee has to be redone. The finding has to be redone, not the case has to go back to court and be retried. That's what people are missing. Because, why are they doing this? Because city prosecutors and the presiding judge failed to give Lee's brother, young Lee, adequate notice to be able to attend the proceeding in person. In other words, they had this proceeding. He's like in California, and he didn't get the notice in time to even get a flight back. So the victim's family never got to say anything at this hearing, and that's when they decided, let him go. So the problem is they're going to redo the hearing, and I think that's just going to be a little. Let's be nice to victims. Or let's be fair. We weren't fair to victims. So then he gets to say his piece and they'll all end up the same way. That's my opinion. I don't think they're going to change the ruling. I don't think that's what's going to happen. So I just think this is, that's all I think it's going to be. So I think it's not going to be a really big deal. Now it does say that Syed had gotten a job with Georgetown University following his release. Okay. Abruptly goes from being an exoneree to a convicted murderer again, at least in the eyes of the law. And the Syed's attorney is going to appeal the decision. And of course, justice will be done. And there's no basis for re-traumatizing Adnan. And meanwhile, he's going to be a free man. And so Tuesday's ruling does not mean Syed will return to prison. There's a 60-day ruling where he gets this, they can do this little hearing, and then that'll be it. My guess is nothing's going to happen. This is just going to be all formality, and just to make themselves not look like they did this behind the victim's back, which they did. The victim's family's back, but it's not going to change anything. I wish it would. I wish you I think it should be an appeal and there should be another trial, but that's not happening. That is not happening. So, yeah. So anyway, okay, now I want to go on to this. I want to go on to Julia, Madeleine McCann case. Before I do that, let me just go here first. The Madeleine, I love this headline. Madeleine boost, new hope in hunt for Madeleine McCann as cops to get hundreds of thousands of pounds in a new funding. New funding. More money being put into the Madeleine McCann case. And there's a comment here I wanted to find at the bottom of this article about the case getting more money. Yet again, what's new? They get money every bloody year. And what are they doing with it? Germany says they got the guy. And the UK, Scotland Yard Operation Grange say, we have no clue who it is. And we haven't had a clue ever because we had a remit not to look at the McCanns. So we have no other clues. But we're going to spend millions of dollars. How much has been spent? Since 2011, 13 million pounds has been spent on this case. And now they're going to give them another 300,000 pounds, of course. So let's see. And it says here, Peter Blexley, a former Met detective, said, as long as there are unanswered questions, I can see why there is a case. What unanswered questions are we talking about? Where her body is? Who done did it? What unanswered questions that aren't there with thousands of other missing children's cases? Only Madeleine McCann. But in this time of squeezed budgets, I can also see why eyebrows will be raised. You betcha. I understand the frustration of families that have missing children who do not have the luxury of such ongoing funding. Absolutely. Why not? So, yeah, here's something I will point out, and this is something that's always bothered me. I know that when a family loses a child goes missing, they want to pull out everything they can to find that child. But at what point does a family like the McCanns, assuming they're innocent as they claim, at what point do they say, our child should not be getting more money than every other child case in the UK? We would like to stand up and say, this is getting to be ridiculous. So much money has been spent, so much has been done. Unless there's some freaky miracle, we know that the money is not going to accomplish anything. Give it to the other families. McCanns, why don't you ever say that? Why do you just keep sucking the money away from every other missing child case in the UK? Why do you do that? Yeah. Well, maybe you found your child. Here she is. Okay. Because we're waiting for the DNA results from Julia Faustyna, Julia Wandelt, whatever her name is. I call her Julia Fake Maddie, but we're waiting for the DNA results, which will prove if she is Madeleine McCann or not, or even her family's actual child, or even if she's Polish. Waiting for the results. Now, I did a commentary on the Dr. Phil show that had Fia Johansson, the fake psychic, fake private investigator, fake everything, but not fake manipulator. She is good at that. And Julia were on the show with Dr. Phil, because Dr. Phil is a shill, and he'll manipulate as much as the other two. So anyway, the three were there. I call them the three grifters, and I did my bit on that, and I got some commentary, which was pretty funny, because I told the story how I did a show once many years ago, and he was a scumbag. They told me I was going to be the lead in the show. They cut my whole part out of it after I did my job and went out to California for no money at that time. And then he stole a lot of my stuff and used it in his final speech. And he was a nasty little buzzard when I was sitting there, and he was saying horrible things about another one of the guests right in front of me. And I was like so appalled at everything that I refused to ever do a show again. And when they called, I told them, no, I will never do your show again. So I thought this was really funny. So this person sent this. All right, I've just been listening to you throwing psychiatric diagnoses out there. I'm a physician who happens to be educated in making these diagnoses. Really? Are you a psychiatrist or a psychologist or just a physician? Okay. I'm a profiler. I've been analyzing personality disorders for 20 years. Yes, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I don't think I'm any worse place than you, and maybe better. It takes many visits to make a proper psychiatric diagnosis. This is particularly true for personality disorders. Yeah, you would think so, but a whole lot of psychologists and psychiatrists don't recognize personality disorders. That's the problem. And I mean, we even have serial killers who get diagnosed, and they're not labeled psychopaths. I'm like, guy's a serial killer. I mean, how much more do you need to diagnose somebody as a psychopath? I need 5 minutes. Sorry that you think you need to keep your, I don't know, 50 visits and a whole lot of income. I can do it in 5. Save you the trouble. But this is the line that cracked me up. The way you talk here just sounds like you are bitter and perhaps jealous that these two lovely ladies had more airtime than you. Well, that's a hell of a psychiatric diagnosis you've done in, like, how long did you watch my video? And how much did you actually miss? Oh my God, I'm jealous. First of all, 2 lovely ladies. Yeah, they're lovely ladies. Okay, I clearly know you can't diagnose anybody. If you think Fia Johansson, big scam artist that she is a lovely lady, I already know you just full of it. I'll give you a little bit of a break on Julia if you actually think she has issues, mental issues that are not psychopathy or severe narcissism. I'll give you a break on that. But in that short time, you determined that I had these issues, that I was, what was I? Bitter and perhaps jealous. Now, I want to point out something. There are three things that a woman gets that men do not get. And it's fascinating. If you had a profiler of my age who was male, who commented on this case, they would never call him an old crone or old geezer. They wouldn't call him that. They would never say he's jealous, and they would never say he's bitter. This is something that, for some reason, women get labeled bitter and jealous because they got more airtime than me. What part did you miss? I've turned down Dr. Phil more than once, said, I won't do your show. If I was desperate for the airtime, I would have said yes anyway. I have done 3,000 television shows. How many have those two creatures gotten? Okay, they're getting their little moment in the sun. But I have done 3,000 television shows in my time, and I still do occasional documentaries. I'm not desperate. I turn down almost all television work these days on purpose because I don't like what they do. So I say no. So obviously I'm not that desperate to be on national television, or I could. As a matter of fact, it's fascinating. Like News Nation, I think, was one of the more recent ones. I can't remember the last few that I pointed out which ones have called me and I say no to. If I did one of those shows on this case, I would have calls just coming in. That's how they do it. They one channel sees you on another channel, and they see that you're out there, and then they call you, be on ours too. Because they don't want to pay anybody. So they do catch you on their show. And now that we have the internet, you don't even have to go into a studio, and they don't have to pay for hair and makeup and a limo. They just have you do it from your house. So I could sit here and I could be on 10 different television shows tomorrow if I wanted to. And once I could start right back into television world right away, because if you don't have to pay me and I'm available, and I've been in television for 15 years, they will have me back on in 3 seconds flat. They don't even care if I said nasty things about them. They'll have me on because I'm fodder for them. So I have the choice of being on. So I do not believe I'm jealous that they got to be on Dr. Phil and I didn't. And bitter. This is another one that's used, bitter. I've heard this all the time. If I comment on something, oh, you're bitter because your book didn't sell as well. You're bitter because you're not a host of a show. You're bitter because they have more subscribers than you. Bitter, bitter, bitter. I'm only bitter when you steal my work. That makes me bitter because I don't like theft. I also understand the reality of things. I've had great fortune in television and I've sold books. I'm fortunate to have even gotten to do that. Am I frustrated sometimes? Yes. And not at other people, at just the way things work. I would like, for example, here's a good example, History Channel. Okay, now I forgot which one it is. Or is it? Yeah, History Channel, I believe. They called me up a couple months ago and asked me to be on their show because they're doing a show on Cleopatra and they want to use my work from my book, The Murder of Cleopatra. I said, sure. What are you paying and how would this work? They said they'd get back to me. They never did, maybe because I asked about being paid. And they just contacted me a week ago and said, can you give us some pictures? We're going to talk about you on the show. I'm like, but really? You're going to talk about me, but you wouldn't have me be in the show because you didn't want to pay anybody anything? And they don't like to pay experts. They just like to make them work for free. So I'm like, really? So yes, would I like a show on my book, Murder of Cleopatra? Do I want a 4 to 6 part series on that? Absolutely. I almost had it once, and then there was a big, huge revolution in Egypt. It killed the project. Am I frustrated sometimes? Yes, of course. But I'm not. I'm not jealous and bitter. But this makes me laugh because one of the reasons I say this, which is important to say this, is that this is how this is attacking the messenger. This is a ad hominem attack. This is a way to trash the person and not what they say. So you have to be very careful of that when you're looking at any channel and they're saying certain things. Are they explaining things, a valid thing, without attacking the person for who they are, as far as just jealous and bitter. So I'm going to now get to the whole thing about Julia's history and the issue of Peter Ney, the guy who, oh, look, I just found out that earring's missing. Wait a minute. See this earring here? This fell out this morning in bed, and I said to myself, as I put the earring on the nightstand, don't forget to put it back in your ear with a new little backing, because you're going to do television today. It's not a style. I just forgot. All right. Let's see. So, oh no, don't worry about it. People picked on me for years. It's actually just well, with the internet, it's a really huge thing. And of course, I pick on some people too. Let me be fair. This is true, because I get upset about certain things. But I try to say what I'm upset about, and not just, somebody's, oh, you're just jealous of me. I've never said that to somebody. I had somebody actually tell me that once at the senior center. And I go to the senior center down the street, and I take Spanish and I take art classes. I have two great teachers for art, and it's fun. It's 10 minutes away, and it's really cheap. So I can just drove by and have a good time. Well, one time I was going into the cafeteria there, their little place where the people sit and have their little drinks and coffees and stuff. And someone was up there doing how to protect yourself on the internet. And she was one of these, one of these companies, multi-level marketing crap that basically are scam artists. And she's scaring these elderly people into thinking that they don't pay $10 a month for the service, that they're going to get ripped off. So I was concerned about this, because I'm like, so I went to the person who was in charge of this, and I said, look, hey, I'm a criminal profiler. This is one of my fields. And the person you have up here they're telling people stuff that's just not true. And it's just upsetting to me, because these people might need that extra $10 a month, and then they're giving it to this company that's really not doing them any good. And I don't know why this was approved of in a center like this, where somebody's selling this kind of stuff. and I said, I'm a criminal profiler. I would be happy to do a free talk to the people here. I was just trying to give them some more reasonable information. And that woman said to me, oh, I see you're jealous of her. I'm like, I'm jealous of a multi-level scammer doing something at a senior center for like 50 elderly people. Oh man, I'm just jealous as all get out. I've missed my opportunity to speak at the senior center. I'm like, so full of crap. I'm looking at her going, seriously, that's what you come up with? I was trying to be helpful, and she actually called me jealous. This is the kind of silly stuff. And why did she do that? Because she was a friend of the person doing the thing, and she's like a manager there of the social events, and she was trying to protect herself. So immediately she attacked my character, calling me jealous of. Oh my God, I've missed my opportunity. I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh my God. Dr. Phil and the senior center. Yeah. Okay, so let me get to Julia. All right, so when I did the thing on Dr. Phil, one of the things they had said on there was about her being abused by a guy named Peter Ney, who she believes is connected to somehow through somebody, his father's got, maybe the father is this Martin Ney guy who has nothing to do with the Madeleine McCann case anyway. But anyway, her claim is, of course, Julia's claim is that she somehow was kidnapped and she doesn't remember the first 5 years of her life. But then I don't remember the first 5 years of my life. So, oh no. Hey, Joyce, my sister, are you still there? Was I kidnapped? Do you remember me? Because I don't remember the first 5 years of my life either. So, so the problem is she talks about this Peter Ney, who has abused her. Now, when Dr. Phil did his show, in my opinion, when you're doing a show to a national audience, an international audience in this case, if you're going to have somebody claim something on the show, I don't just want you to go, yeah, when you were abused by blah, blah, blah. I want proof, because I had not seen it at that point. And since Julia, in my opinion, is, the boy that cried wolf, except she's the girl that cried wolf. She cries wolf about a lot of things that I just know are garbage. So if she has a truth in there, I'm likely not to believe it unless I see absolute proof. And when Dr. Phil comes up and says, sort of skates over that and doesn't really go into it, doesn't sit there with some paperwork in his hands and say, here is evidence from the courts of Poland that say this, and it's got, Now there is, so this is important. There actually is. And so this is what I want to discuss, because somebody sent this to me and I'm like, all right. Clearly this is an event, an incident that did happen. Okay. And this is the guy here, Peter Ney, my abuser, blah, blah, blah. And then supposedly the defendant, Peter Ney, was found guilty of committing the alleged acts and had a penalty of 2 years and 6 months, although he got out quite quickly. And yes, this is from the Republic of Poland. And I have these two pieces were sent to me on email. Somebody had said, hey, no, you're wrong about this. She actually was. Admittedly, I did not believe it straight out. I knew that she had said she was abused, but I didn't know there was a court case about her being abused. So yes, there was. And I'm going to get into some of the details of, I want to explain some things about that. So how it would affect her and what it might mean. And I'll get into it in a second. I want to first point out that yes, there was this guy. And something else that is very important is that she was in a court case. That court case means there's documentations as to who she is. They have to have that information to go forward with the case. They have to know who her parents are. They have to have documentation. And also, which some people pointed out, and I didn't say this in the Dr. Phil thing, and I had said, she says she's 21. She says she has documentation. That's how she knows she's 21. I'm like, wait a minute. What documentation that proves you're 21? What would that be? And a whole bunch of people in the messages said, yeah, how would she get from Poland to the United States without a passport? And how do you get a passport? You have a birth certificate. So she has a passport. So so clearly there is documentation. She claims she's 21. I don't know if she is 21. That's what she claims. I don't have any proof of that yet, but she could be 21. If that's what her birth certificate says, and that's what the passport says, then she's 21. All right. This case of Martin Ney happened in 2010, which would make her about 8 years old. I misread that originally because I was trying to translate and came up incorrectly in the translation, but I did a better job of translating it anyway. So there's these two things, which, by the way, you can use in case you've never used it before. Take your phone, get Google Translate. It's an app. And on Google Translate, there's a little camera. You hit the camera button, you put in what you want. I put in Polish to English. You hit the camera button, and you just hold it up like this. And it changes the words right in front of you from Polish to English. And you can read any document, no matter what it looks like. It's amazing, absolute amazing tool. So I was able to read the document. Here's what the document said for you who do not know. And I'm going to talk about how it matters. All right. According to the document, and from one other thing I read, is that Martin Ney was convicted of the crime of sexual touching of Julia. Touching in that he touched her in private area and she touched his private area. I'll say that's basically it. And supposedly maybe kissed her. That was what he was convicted of. Now, if it's an 8-year-old child, that is a very, very, that's a bad incident. Okay. It's a bad incident. Apparently it did not happen in her home. It happened at somebody else's home. So I don't know what was going on there. I don't know. Apparently there were no witnesses as far as I have found. It said that she had told the family, and after she told them, they put her on 32 medications a day. There's another story about her, 32 medications a day, starting at 8 years old, all the way through. 32 medications a day for an 8-year-old. So this is another one of these. Is this another crying wolf thing that I'm not believing because it sounds ridiculous? So at any rate, so supposedly, as far as I can see, and I don't know this is true because I cannot get information, that she told somebody this happened. Now, how did he get convicted? I don't know. I can't read the court case. I would like to know the details. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but the question is how it happened. And let me give you 4 scenarios just so you understand that there are always more scenarios, and then you got to figure out which one it is. 1, that there's a witness, that somebody came in and saw him touching her. Boom, done deal, proof. All right, the second one is she's touched. She goes home and tells mom, I've been touched in this way. And it's true. And he confesses maybe to it, and he's convicted. The third one is where a child claims they've been touched, haven't necessarily been touched that way. Now you say, oh, no 8-year-old would do that. Yes, they will. There are little 8-year-old psychopaths out there. Not saying that Julia was one, just saying they are out there. There's a 6-year-old just shot his teacher in Virginia. So little psychopaths are out there. Psychopaths develop by the time I believe by the time they're 5 years old. They start having attachment disorder when they were babies. And by the time 2, 3, 4 goes by, they got issues. They can be very conniving and manipulative. And if they find a way to do something to get back at somebody, like a stepfather, he's a stepfather. Peter Ney was a stepfather. She didn't like the guy. Maybe somebody said, why don't you just accuse him of touching you? Maybe she said, great idea. So she did. Didn't rape her, but touched her. And maybe there's like no physical proof, but you make the claim and people go, oh my God, believe the 8-year-old, guy goes down. That happens. Another one, a guy is overly demonstrative. And it's maybe she says something to mom and mom gets worried, takes her to a psychologist to find out what happened. Some psychologists will actually work. That other physician who says, I don't know what I'm talking about. There are cases where the psychologist will actually talk the kid into believing that they were sexually. They'll push them with certain questions to move from, he kissed me on the cheek to he kissed me on the lips till, he touched my butt, maybe just a little happy little swat or something. Hey, go on, go play now. And now he put his hand up her clothes. This happens. Another one, the mother has Munchausen's. The mother of Munchausen, this happens quite a bit too. She will want to get back at somebody, so she will start saying to her kid, this is what happened to you. You say this is what happened. And she will convince other people that her daughter said this and this is what happened, and she'll get back at somebody. So mom could have Munchausen's. I think those are basically the different possibilities. Do I know which one is true for Julia? No, I don't. I have no idea. Because she appears to be a rather pathological liar now, in my opinion, and she has a lot of things. She appears to be very narcissistic. She's has very grandiose thinking. She's not going to be just a missing child. She's going to be Madeleine McCann. So she's got issues which lead me to believe she has a problem with a high level of narcissism and possibly psychopathy. I cannot prove these things. I'm just saying that this is what her behaviors indicate. Now, if she truly is now a psychopath, if she is, not saying she is, then she would have been one back then. Could she have lied? Yes, she could. Now, on the other hand, even if she's one, she might just have a lot of scummy people around her. She could be right. Maybe she doesn't like her family. Maybe she thinks her family's mistreated her. Maybe the stepfather did what he did, and he's a creep, total creep. Now, what would this creepy moment mean? Unpleasant as it was, I do not see evidence that somebody came in and raped her night after night after night, or forced into oral sex acts or things like that. I don't see that yet anyplace. I just see that he touched her. Unpleasant as that is, it's not necessarily destroys a kid's life. Just like, I was assaulted in a funhouse. Somebody touched me rather intimately in a funhouse, and I escaped. Now I was 12 or 13. I went on with life. Now I'm saying some people can have more of a reaction to that than other people. Handle things better. An 8-year-old, hopefully, somebody would just say, hey, that guy's a creepo. What he did to you, it just, wasn't about you. His little hands, you should keep those little hands away from you. And now he's never going to bother you again. And then make her life a pleasant and positive place to be. But I don't know what happened in her life. I don't know. Her mother may be a narcissist. How do I know? maybe her mother picks really bad guys, and she picked this guy as a stepfather, and he sucked. Maybe her early life wasn't pleasant. So now here's the question. There's many people who have unpleasant early lives. It doesn't make them into a situation that she is in, that she is doing what she is doing. Massive attention seeking. That doesn't just come because you had an unpleasant experience when you were a kid, or your life wasn't great. However, it's also possible that her life wasn't great, that there were these concerning people in her lives. And because of that, when she was born into this family, she did get attachment disorder, which developed into psychopathy and or other issues. So we don't know, because it's a very complicated situation as to how a kid ends up being what they are when they're an adult. What bothers me as an adult is once you are an adult and you are doing things that are wrong, they're still wrong. Regardless of your early life, I'm sure a lot of serial killers didn't come out of the greatest homes. Why is a 6-year-old kid go and shoot his teacher? I'm going to say something sucked in his house. You know what I mean? It's just things weren't great. But I will also point something else out. Sometimes the kid develops a psychopathy and the family family is very nice. And all the other kids are great, but this one kid is just whatever they are. They're a wreck, man. And they do things that the family doesn't know what to do about. They kill animals. They burn down the shed next door. They lie all the time. They steal from their parents, and they're beside themselves. They don't know what to do with this character. Now, that may be what Julia is. She may be that person her family never knew what to do with, because and they said that. They said, we've taken her to therapist after therapist after therapist. Nothing works. She doesn't cooperate. She tells stories all the time. She's always attention seeking. Maybe they just nice people who've just given up on what the heck we can do with her. So it's very complicated in that way. But what is wrong is what she's doing is wrong. What Thea is doing is wrong, regardless of the reasons behind it. And what Dr. Phil is doing is wrong too. She had an issue with her birth. She had places to go with that. And that was not on the internet. That would be in her hometown. She could go to the authorities. She's 21 years old, right? She is an adult. She can get her birth certificate. She can go to the hospital. She can do whatever she needs to do. But she went to the internet and said, I am Madeleine McCann. And she went for the big attention scam. So sorry, I don't believe Julia is Madeleine McCann or any other missing child. I believe, is she just disturbed, or is she a psychopath? I can't prove one or the other, but I can say this, because she's very manipulative, in my opinion, and is so attention seeking. I don't think she just suffered some trauma, and therefore she's just this desperate thing who is seeking out to find out who she is. She plays too many games for that, in my opinion. But we'll find out, won't we? We'll find out. Before I go on, I want to point out a couple other situations with kids recently. But before I go on, I'll just check some of your comments, and then I'll go on to a couple more cases I want to talk about. Kids and families. Let's see. Let's see. Interesting. One of you said, I'm going to put on screen, my sister accused my father of inappropriate touching and nearly destroyed my family. Yeah, touching is a really interesting thing, because it's hard to prove. It's like a he said, she said thing, where people end up in bed together, and then the girl says later, oh, he raped me, even though we were both drunk and out of it. And he's like, it was consensual. And she's like, no, he raped me. Can't prove it. Same thing. Touching is a really easy thing to get away with, because how are you going to prove it? In what way? I mean, you could go for DNA, but that's not usually what happens, especially back in the day. Nobody was, they're swabbing down the kid for DNA. to see whether his fingers shouldn't be. So a lot of times it again is a he said, she said. And the sad thing is creepos, creepy dudes get away with it sometimes for that exact reason as well. They will touch because it won't leave the evidence that a rape would leave. So they do other things that are less invasive. And yet again, some people who claim this thing also pick those non-invasive ways in order to be able to make an accusation that they aren't having to give a lot of proof of. So it goes both ways. It really does. Let's see. Yeah, and it also is saying that somebody says here they had a friend who accused stepfather as such, and I don't know whether to believe her or not. And where the belief comes in, if you know, this is where I think it's real important for when a case is being investigated, especially when you're talking about Munchausen's, is you have to look at the entire history. Like if you take Sherry Papini, she had a history of making up stuff and accusing people. She had a history of it. So when she went missing, that was one, like, yeah. Mm-hmm. So if a person is always honest, never says anything like this, and suddenly they say this happened, and they would never say anything like this. They've never said anything like this before. They've never lied. That's not the kind of person they are. And suddenly they say this, maybe they can be believed. But if that person's always stretching the truth, always manipulating, telling little lies, big lies, and then they say this, it's again, the boy that cried wolf. So the problem is the boy that cried wolf can be telling the truth once. And that is why I say to people, hey, if you want to be believed, don't ever tell a lie. So Julia, I believe, has told too many lies that it's hard to believe her. And that's the problem. And then that's her fault. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who lie. So once you start doing that, it's like, and then, oh, you didn't believe me. Well, no. Why not? Because you lie all the time. That's why. Let me point out another kid that I want to talk about. I want to bring out this book. This book, if you really want to, if you're into psychology and crime, this book is fabulous. It's called The Myth of Delinquency. And it's called An Anatomy of Juvenile Nihilism. And it's by Elliot Layton. This is a very, very much a psychological book. Let me read Elliot Layton. He is from the Department of Anthropology, which is interesting. You see, when people always accuse a person of writing something about psychology who is not a, quote, psychologist, that doesn't mean they can't write about psychology. They can learn psychology too, even without the title. He is in the Department of Anthropology at Memorial University of Newfoundland in St. John's. I don't know if he's there anymore. I didn't check to see. I got this book and see when it was written, so he might not even be with us anymore. This was copyrighted in 1979. Maybe you're with us, Elliot. I don't know. I'd have to check it out on it. I'd have to Google you with obituary to see if you're around. But this is a very fascinating book where he goes through a lot of families and the issues that they have and why certain kids end up being delinquents. And sometimes you can really see the path that they might go down to become that delinquent. And that the family often is a part of the mix as to where they end up. So when I talk about Julia, I don't know that she's got a perfect family. Maybe she's got a great family and she's just been that one. But maybe there's been a contributing factor in that family, not necessarily kidnapping and sex trade, that kind of stuff, sex trafficking, where there's no proof of it. Just because you have a creepy stepfather doesn't mean it's a sex trafficker. There's lots of people with a creepy stepfather or other relatives who touch them inappropriately. And they're not sex traffickers. They're just nasty little people, who have a kid around who can't complain or do complain, which is what they should do. But, anyway, this is a great book. And I'm going to point out a couple things in this book in a minute, but I want to talk about this case. People have asked me about this case, and it's rather fascinating. This case is, well, let me do this one first. This creature, who is 100% a psychopath, he stabbed to death this beautiful girl over 100 times. And he did it, why? Because he wanted to see what it felt like to kill somebody. Yeah, I'm going to say That kid's a mess. And that kid is somebody you never want to let on the outside of prison. And now that he's in prison, apparently he's still drawing things and bragging about killing and all that stuff. So he's got massive issues. I don't know what brought him there, but this is a guy who is a psychopath, and I don't need a degree in psychology to say that. 100% psychopath. To think you need to stab somebody over 100 times to feel what it likes to kill somebody. First of all, wanting to feel the need, what it's like to kill, is kind of creepy right there. Even with animals, I mean, there's the concept that is a hunter goes and shoots a deer, for example, which I don't know how people do it. I mean, I couldn't pull up a rifle and look that poor little deer in the eye and shoot it. I can't do it. I can't pick up a fish and I kill the fish. I put it back, I mean, I just can't do that. That's just not me. I catch bugs and put them outside my house. I just can't do it. Now I had fed my, my lizard some bugs, and that always bothered me because I like the bugs too. So I'm not very good at this stuff. I mean, yeah, I let him kill the bugs, but I still am like, oh no, the poor bugs. So I don't understand the thrill of killing. That does not do anything for me. But for a lot of people, even hunters, it doesn't do anything for them. It's not the killing process that they like. It's the if you're there for the food, it's I'm getting meat for the family. That kind of thing. I'm fishing for the family. Some people don't think animals have that many feelings. So if you kill them quickly, you haven't done a terrible thing. So they're not into the killing. They're just into the result of the killing, shall we say. But if you have a kid who's growing up who gets a thrill out of killing, watching, like pulling the legs off of little creatures or smashing a dog's head in with a rock, you got a problem. Because that child is getting a thrill through the kill. All right. So this is what this creature did. He got a thrill out of stabbing her repeatedly. A beautiful, nice girl who probably he was jealous about her. She was popular or whatever, because she was, I think, a cheerleader. So and I'm going to say if you're that kind of a killer, you're probably not super popular in school. So she's probably the girl that you can't get. Except with a knife, and he did. So now she's dead and you're not. And you do get the thrill of the kill every time you stabbed her. So there are kids who are that off by the time they reach a certain age. But what I always want to point out is it doesn't start. He wasn't a great kid till he was 15 years old and then turned into a killer. I mean, he turned into a killer, but he wasn't not a psychopath. He's probably been a psychopath since he was a wee thing. And when I point that out with Julia, if she's got issues like narcissism or psychopathy, it didn't start later in life. It started very young. So even the incident at 8 years old wouldn't have necessarily, it wouldn't make her a psychopath or make her a narcissist at 8 years old. It might upset her or make her depressed and fearful, those kind of things. But it doesn't give you a personality disorder. That's already there. I believe it's already there by very young ages. You just haven't been able to, when you're young, you don't have a lot of power. And as you get more and more power, you get better and better with your personality disorder. So suddenly you're good at manipulating people and you tell your lies better. And then when you get a car, you got more opportunities. So, and when you get old enough to be maybe have sex or be sexy, you can use that. You can manipulate people with that. But you just don't turn into that at a later age. You just don't. You're not like, oh, she's just she was a wonderful, the most wonderful person in the world, never lied, never manipulated, never did anything. But one day she just woke up and became that at 16, at 17, at 20. No. And neither did this guy. I'm going to say there's a whole history behind him. So I want to go to this other case, which is really fascinating right now. And because it's sad. It's a sad case. But I don't know where the issue comes in here. This is, let me find him. He's just been found safe. His name is, hold on a second. His name is, Scotty Morris. All right. He went missing in Indiana. All right. And what happened was he went missing. And take a look at his shirt. I am a liar. I hurt my brother. And it's this shirt, which his mother apparently wrote for him and made him wear and took a picture of it. And then they had an argument, and then he ran out of the house. And he was missing for a week. So now there's, people the police are trying to find him. Apparently the parents have no idea where he would have gone. Most people thought maybe he was dead someplace. Pretty sad. He was just found. He vanished there, and a 5-minute walk away, he was found in that location. And this is still a kind of a mystery, because he was found with his mother at that point. This is what I heard, and that somebody had called the police or whatever because they heard a loud argument. Police came and found him with his mother. Now, his mother had given a very impassioned reach out to her son. Please, we love you. Don't worry about coming home. You're not going to be punished. And if the cops show up and you're scared of the cops, you can always call us directly. Which I thought was interesting. I'm sorry, but I would never say to my teenager cops. I would say I wouldn't tell them to be scared of police officers. I would say, if the police officers are trying to find you and bring you home, don't be scared of the police officers. They're not going to do any harm to you. So just be very peaceful and go with him, and they'll bring you back to the house. I wouldn't say, essentially, she's saying, if you don't trust them. Why not? Why didn't he trust the cops? And then she ends up there before the police do. So did he call her? And what's going on here? So now some people noticed that his hair is buzzed. And some people thought that she did that to him as a punishment because he had shaggier hair before. But then there's a claim that he went into like hair cutter or something and asked that to be done. And so that was his choice. Some people think he looks like a mass murderer in the making. His demeanor and his shaved head and maybe that he's got issues, and maybe that his family is abusive. Now, I don't know any of these things, but the shirt is concerning. And social services apparently has now, they cleared him to go back to the family. There's supposedly no suspects that, like nobody in the family hit him out as a hoax. But where was he for a week? He was still in the same clothes. It was very cold. He didn't have a coat. Where was he? Somebody had to keep him someplace, feed him, do something with him. But so far, we don't have information on that. But I just want to talk about what's happening with this kid in this family to make him supposedly hurt his brother and have his mother humiliate him in that way. Now, either there's one or two things. This is an old style thing that parents used to do way, way back, and it was cruel. And it still is basically on the cruel side. There's a lot of punishments you can give other than making a shirt and making him wear it like that. So either the family's highly abusive toward him, or he has such a personality disorder, they're beyond figuring out what to do with him. Now, I don't know which way this goes. And this is where it would be very helpful to have really good psychologists involved who know what they're doing, understand personality disorders, but also understand if the family is causing some of this. And one of the things that can happen, I think this is one of the points from Elliot Leighton, which I really liked, is that sometimes a family, a parents, or sometimes just the mom or just a dad will designate one of the children as the fall guy, essentially, for the family, or not for the rest of the family, not for the other kids, but for themselves. They need somebody to blame for things going wrong in the family. Either sometimes the Munchausen's women, for example, will cause a child to be sick all the time so they can then get the attention, but they can also say, see, all my problems are because of him. Sometimes they treat that one child in a horrific way that then causes that child to become the one that acts out in the family. And then they can point anything that's failing in their life, they can point to that kid and say, if it weren't for that kid, man, our family, we'd be in much better shape except for that kid. And it's called, typical to this thing, you single out one child in order that he or she may be utterly rejected and the recipient of all the embittered rage. So that is, it's a very bizarre thing that does happen in certain families. And so Elliot Layton goes into that as one of the causes of that. One of the causes of a child ending up being a delinquent, that he wasn't born a delinquent, but that because he was treated in such a way, became one. Now, and that can show why a child, even as a small child, gets that attachment disorder, where instead of loving that little baby, that baby is tossed aside and ignored. And then as it gets older, it gets mistreated as a 1-year-old, it gets mistreated as a 2-year-old, and that child develops hatred and bitterness and psychopathy. So they're like, hey, everybody treats me like garbage, so I don't care about anybody. I don't love anybody. I don't have to love anybody. I'm not going to love anybody. I'm just going to, you keep doing these things to me. I'm just going to figure it all out. I'm going to set up a new game board. I'm going to win. I'm going to use you. I'm going to manipulate you. I'm going to get what I want. And I'm going to get out my rage and my bitterness and all that kind of stuff. So this is sometimes what happens. What's happening with this child, I don't know, but it doesn't look good. So I don't know what's happening in the family, and I don't know what I say, whether they drove him to have issues, or some kids do seem to have them very young, and the family didn't do anything to them. They can't figure it out. So, but when they get to be an adult and they still display those issues, that's when they can become problematic to society, problematic in relationships, problematic to maybe even dangerous. And I don't think, for example, Julia is dangerous. I think she's just a pain in the butt. And I don't know if I don't know if she's just a problem to her family. She's a problem to her boyfriend, supposedly dumped her. Problem to other victims who maybe really, who really were kidnapped. I mean, it's hard to say. Or just the fact that she manipulates people, and people lose faith in other people because they have been manipulated. When they find out the truth, then they're like, really. So a lot of people out there who, oh my God, I think she's telling the truth. When they find out she isn't, how do they feel about that? Do they feel used, manipulated? It's like, that's not fair. I put all my heart out there and then you just stomped all over it because you already knew it was a game. You didn't care about me. And that's always true for someone who does have a personality disorder. When they harm other people, they don't care. The other people are pawns in their game. And if you're being a pawn in somebody's game, she doesn't end up well for you. But I don't know what Julia's problem is. And I don't know when the problem came about. Whether the problem was created by her family early on, or she created it herself. And sometimes we'll never know the mix of things that a person ends up with a serious personality disorder. We just don't. And some people would say that people come into life with a personality, and they end up in that family, and therefore they didn't come in as a blank slate. So we can't blame the family necessarily that they were who they were. And so that's a metaphysical, theological, spiritual question. I don't have an answer for, but let me look at some of your comments. Let's see. Oops, sorry. I was trying to. It's fairy princesses. Attachment disorders are the root of behavior problems for kids in school. If we recognize this and treated them thusly, we might have a chance of mitigating the damage to society. Yeah, but the problem is they usually come to school with the attachment disorder already sunk in. And there is some of the problem. But I do think that once that child has that, if the community isn't a good community, if the family isn't a good family, and the community isn't a good community, and the school isn't a good school where everybody works together, and there's a lot of positive thinking and support, a child who has issues or is on the verge of having issues will just tumble on, and they do become a danger to society. Absolutely. Damn, I wish I had thought of the shirt. That might be a little bit too awful. And I agree with this, Kelly. The parents like to humiliate their kid. That's just awful. Humiliation is not a particularly great disciplinary method. Humiliation, because humiliation usually causes a lot of does cause bitterness and anger and people who want to, when they've been humiliated, they want to strike back. Because humiliation, generally speaking, is not it's just not an appropriate thing most of the time. I mean, once upon a time it was used that's what the stocks were. You would humiliate people in the community by putting them in stocks in the public where people could spit on them and mock them, and so they'd never do it again. I don't know. I see some of the concept of that as adults, but I don't see, when you got down to the children, there are kids who were forced to do horrible things like, wear a thing, if they had a problem bedwetting, they had to wear a sign that say, I peed my bed, and get on the school bus with that. So then all the kids would laugh at them, and that would theoretically stop them from doing that. Yeah, yeah, I'm going to go with cruel and sadistic. And that's the problem. When a child is treated that way, they become that themselves. But yeah, I don't know. Finding out what happened all the way into the past is often very, very difficult. Yeah, we have to, I believe, as a society, we have to respect the concept that no child should come into the world unwanted, and that child should be cared for with love from the day it's born or from the day it's adopted, either way. And if you're not willing to do that, it's not a toy. A child is not a toy, and you can't treat it as a toy. And too many children, they're used for so many reasons other than that the family wants to welcome a child and care for it and love it. That's the only reason the child should be there. And in today's world, where we've got a massive amount of ways to not get pregnant, I think we should be able to accomplish that, at least in societies where there's access to such things. But there's a lot of selfishness, a lot of carelessness, and then when that child arrives and they don't have the parents that care, the family that cares, it can be brutal. I mean, I don't understand the world entirely myself. I just know what happens when they get to be adults, or old enough to be able to handle a weapon of any sort. It can be a knife, it can be a gun, it can be a rock, it can be their hands. It can be just words, accusations, and they can do tremendous damage. So, you want to do your best not to have a child grow up like that. And one thing I will tell you that I do see, generally speaking, when you have a loving family, the chances of those kids having personality disorders are very much lower than when they don't have a loving family. So I usually find that there's usually something wrong in the background. So when I go back to Julia, do I think there was possibly something wrong in her background? Perhaps, but I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, again, once in a while I find a family who's done everything right, it seems like, and they got this nightmare of a kid. Don't know. But when you become an adult, you're responsible for your behavior. And we have to hold people accountable for their behavior and not coddle them for their poor behavior, for their lies, for their cheating, for their manipulations, and put up with it. We shouldn't extol it. We shouldn't put them out on big shows and every media channel who's big. And I'm not a big one. I'm just trying to bring out truth here. And I'm not promoting her, which is what annoys me about these other channels. They're promoting her, and they're promoting what she says, and they're feeling sorry, and they're doing exactly what she wants and exactly what Theo wants, giving them the attention that they want, not based on the truth. And there's no excuse for that. So, but the media channels are pretty crappy themselves. So there you go. Let me see what time I got here. I got 5:26. Okay. Somebody asked me about, which guy is it? Wait a minute, where'd he go? Oh, this fella, which is, isn't it? We've had these cases recently where we have what appears to be psychosis, and people always wonder what happens to the person when they go through some kind of psychotic event. And this poor fellow has been missing for a long time, and it would appear he had some kind of psychotic event, and His name is Lars Mittank. I think it is Mittank. He's German's Mittank. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He's from Germany, and you can see a real good-looking young man. He goes with a bunch of friends to. Wait a minute, hold on a second. He goes with a whole bunch of friends to Bulgaria. And we went to this place called the Golden Sands Resort. It's a gorgeous place, got the beach there on the Black Sea. And he and his friends spend a week there, having a great time, drinking, partying, blah, blah, blah. Everything's fine. Until right near the end of the trip, they go to this McDonald's and he gets into an argument with somebody and somebody ends up punching him. And he ends up having a torn eardrum or something like that. And so what happens is he goes to they take him to friends go to a doctor with him, and the doctor gives him some medicine and says, going on the flight is, maybe not a great idea right this second, maybe a few days, give it a few days and get the medicine working. The friends asked if they should stay. He said, no, go home. So they went home, but he didn't have lodgings in that hotel. So he went to find a cheap hotel color, and he stayed there. And some people get really upset. Oh, why did his friends leave him? Well, he said, he wasn't underage. And I traveled I traveled very young, and I stayed in places like Hotel Color, and I was a female. So it's not like, oh my God, he was just thrown to the wolves. It wasn't like that. He went there, and then that night he started calling his mom, and he started saying weird stuff like that. He asked about the medicine, whether there was something the medicine would do to him. And so a lot of people thought he took the medicine and it made him psychotic, but apparently he never actually took the medicine. But he was asking about that. And then he said to his mother, there was people coming after him and all this stuff. So he ends up going to the airport the next day. Mother just says, come home. He goes to the airport. He's seen there with his luggage. The mother said, go see the doctor at the airport before you go. And so he did. And while he was there, some construction dude came in and he freaks out. He runs out of the airport without the luggage, starts running across out of the airport into this grassy area, leaps a fence, and disappears, and is never found. And so the question is, was he, what happened to him? Never been found. And this has been now, let's see, disappeared in 2014. So we're talking, it definitely has never been found. By the way, let's see who, I thought that it was a fairly, hold on a second. Dr. Grande did a very short thing on his case, which I thought was very clear, and talked about some of the issues of psychosis. And he does have training in that field. Because he does therapy. And so you want to hear more about that, I'd go there and listen to his short thing on that. But I wanted to point out the thing about psychosis. Clearly he was psychotic, and there was nobody chasing him. No, first of all, one of the things people need to understand, especially most people, you're a regular person. The government isn't after you. Nobody cares about you. You're not that important. Now people think, oh my God, somebody might be listening to me on my phone. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. You're boring. Most of the time when I'm chatting, only people who really care about me and my life and their, the life, like if I talk with my sis on the phone, she and I are both into what we're talking about. But, I think if anybody listened in on our phone call, they could care less. I talk with friends about lots of different topics. Talk to my son. We talk about economics and politics. Hey, if the government wanted to listen in on that, they'd fall asleep because they're not into what we're saying. So nobody cares about you that much unless you're in the mob, unless you're in the cartel, or unless you're a spy. Unless you're one of those, nobody cares. So when people say, well, maybe somebody was after him, why? He's a kid. It's just no reason for anybody to be after him. And nobody was ever seen after him. When he flew out of the airport, just ran out of there, there was nobody chasing him. He thought somebody was chasing him, that he would go. He's in a completely different country, Bulgaria. He's running across fields and jumping fences with nobody chasing him. You can say he's psychotic. Now, whether this was a new schizophrenia that came in or whatever, don't know. But clearly he was in psychosis, and it's super, super sad. And I don't know whether there was any evidence of this prior, Now, sometimes when you talk to families, they'll say they never saw anything, but there was stuff there that they downplayed or don't want to accept. Sometimes there's drug usage that they don't want to deal with that may have also kicked off psychosis. They're finding more and more that the high amount of THC in marijuana is causing more schizophrenia in young people. And there's other stuff that just can over time cause issues, and a very fragile mind of teens. Clearly was in psychosis. Where did he go? Who knows? I mean, he may have run into the woods and hid in a little cave someplace, thinking he was safe there, and he could have died of dehydration or who knows. Do not believe he was murdered. I don't know any evidence he committed suicide. So my guess is more a case of he fell into a lake. Just his body's just hidden in some culvert someplace and just never been found. Who knows? But psychosis is a real thing in some of these cases where people go missing. That it's a lot more prevalent than we realize. And oftentimes when there is psychosis involved, we see a bad end because the person it goes on for days, and we see quite a number of cases where people do really strange things under those circumstances. They're extremely paranoid. So because they actually believe somebody's after them, doing things to them, and they're that paranoid, they put themselves in very precarious situations, which often end up in their demise. So that was just another example of that. It's really, really sad. But yeah, sometimes that's just what happens, very, very, very awful. But nobody was chasing them, and that's the big clue, that there's no evidence of that. Oh, I remember this. Yeah, I remember the old hang the sheets out. And you have to run home in time before anybody sees the sheets. So cruel, so absolutely cruel. Because I think at that point, for some reason, I did not understand that bedwetting is something that a person can't stop. That unless they're doing it on purpose, they don't know that they're doing it until it's too late. And it's something in the sleep cycle and all of that. It would be just far better to set up a situation that, plastic on the bed, something simpler that, obviously the sheets would have to be washed, but something that, it's really sad that was not understood, and maybe still isn't always understood at all. Let's see. Pronounced Mitunk. Mitunk. Okay. All right. It's what happens when I don't. I actually did look at a video and hear his name, but then I forgot. So, yeah, I think there's no way to get around psychosis. There's a question of whether somebody, he punched him and he got like some kind of concussion, but that's kind of extreme for just, that moment. And that I think Dr. Grande goes into that, which, yeah, I don't think that was caused by that. Supposedly he never took the medication. Okay. That was what was interesting. I thought, yeah, maybe that was something in there but suppose he never took it. And maybe the reason he didn't take it was because he thought he was being poisoned. And so he didn't. So, yeah, it's a really strange situation. Very sad. I don't know if I just feel so sorry for parents who have to live with that. So, okay, last thing I'm going to talk about. Yeah, I just want to mention this because I've been talking about the U.S. involvement and the cartel involvement in the United States, and how we're blaming the south of the border, but we ourselves are not doing much in north of the border, shall we say. And we're doing less and less of it in the last couple of years. That it's just the cartels are really, you wouldn't believe how much the cartels have gotten into the major cities in the United States and even the small cities in the United States. It's not the old drug war, it's a new drug war, which is scary. And for that reason, I just want to point this out because there's a movie that I just saw because I'm studying Spanish. It's called Somos. It's a Netflix show. And it's about a town called Allende. Let me tell you about this situation. And the movie it's fictionalized, but it's based on it. And especially when you get to the last episode, they did some things in that episode, which one of them just blew me away. And it really was heartbreaking, super, super heartbreaking. So what happened in Allende, which is why I want to bring this up, just because if we don't pay attention, we may, and drugs are not, I keep saying this over and over again, drugs are not a victimless crime. Using drugs is damaging. It's one of the most damaging crimes ever. And I don't understand why we're downplaying it, because it destroys the person who takes it. It destroys the family around them. It can destroy the community. It can destroy children, and it destroys other countries. And a lot of people will point out the U.S. is one of the major reasons why Mexico and Colombia have cartels. Why? Because we have an insatiable desire to use massive amounts of drugs, and we do very little to stop it from coming across our borders. Now, why is that? Well, Somos shows how this town, I'm sorry, that is, there's an article called How the U.S. Triggered a Massacre in Mexico, and we did. This is kind of a picture of Allende. I don't know, this is before or after what happened in Allende, but you can see it's a cute little Mexican town. I love Mexican towns. They always have a town, the town square essentially, in the middle of the town. You can go to the plaza and you can hang out there for music and dance, and they bring out the ice cream carts and sometimes sell hot food, and people sit on all the benches, and the architecture is always really cute. And I love Mexico. I love all these towns in Mexico. I'm glad I wasn't in Allende. Let me tell you what happened in Allende. So this was at some point. Hold on, let me find my article. Hold on. Come on, where'd it go? Shoot. Where'd my Allende go? Oh, come on now. Maybe I have to pull up this one. It was just a nice town. And at one point, 50 trucks arrived in Allende, carrying people connected to the cartel. I mean, they were driving in with the guys sitting in with guns in the back of these trucks. They broke into houses, looted them, and burned them. Afterwards, they kidnapped the people that lived in those houses and took them to a ranch just outside of Allende. First, they killed them. Then they put them in a storage shed filled with hay. They doused them with fuel and lit them on fire. And the flames went on for hours and hours. Allende is a quiet ranching town of about 23,000 at that time, about a 40-minute drive from Eagle Pass, Texas. Entire blocks of the town's busiest street lay in ruins after this happened. They trashed the entire town, burnt down houses, and killed a good portion of the people that lived in them. And it was 2011, the gunmen of the Zetas cartel, one of the most violent drug trafficking organizations in the world, swept through Allende and nearby towns like a flash flood, demolishing homes and businesses, kidnapping and killing dozens, perhaps hundreds of men, women, and children. And this movie shows how it all happened, that as the drug cartel got in there and started taking over, they started controlling the police. They started controlling businesses. They bought up businesses and they control the businesses in town. So pretty much at a certain point, the cartel was like infiltrated everything part of your town. At a certain point, somebody told the DEA that about these phones, and they were able to track the phones to certain people. But what happened was there was corruption higher up in Mexico, and the federales gave that information. Oh, you got rats in your organization, and so they came in and just decimated the town in the most brutal way, killing everybody, grandmothers, children, just vicious. And basically, they're making their point. And I can guarantee you, a lot of other towns are like, okay, you ain't gonna say anything. This is the level of danger. And if we do not stop them from coming across the border into the U.S. towns, then we have cartels controlling our towns, our police, our businesses. And I did the video recently about how the guy in Wells Fargo, right across the border in Texas, he was money laundering for the cartels. And so right there, And it's going across the United States. Drugs are not a victimless crime. Stop saying that they are. And unless you, and as we look the other way more and more often, and don't stop the transit of drugs across the border, and leave the border open so that it's not a rare occasion, but an everyday occasion or an every minute occasion, we're going to see things get worse. And we have seen things get worse. That's why everybody's dying of fentanyl. I mean, there's a reason for that. And now there's even worse stuff coming over, and people just keeling over right and left. Children are getting hold of it. And so it's like, yeah, once upon a time we did have a war on drugs, but we failed, and then we just sort of gave up. And now we just, if you give up, you're going to be in worse shape than if you fought it. And that's what happens to certain countries. They've had cartels take over, like in Colombia with Pablo Escobar. He took over for quite a while and controlled a whole lot until finally they took him down. And finally they took him down. The town of Medellin in Colombia used to be just cartel territory. Now it's a thriving town because somebody finally fought back and said, we've had enough. We're not going to allow this kind of crap. But right now, the U.S. is allowing this kind of crap, and we got to stop pointing fingers across the border and start looking back at our own selves. That's my little soapbox for today. really are. But it's very good. But go watch it. It's Somos. It's on Netflix, and I thought it was excellent, and it really give you it was unbelievable just to watch. It's a really, really sad story because they did a good job of letting you get to know all these people that were living in this town and were having a good life until this happened. And you'll see what happened to them. It's pretty shocking, and it's very disturbing. Oh, before I go, since I have a couple minutes left, I got to do a Dear Abby thing at the end here, just because I have two of them and they're fun. Let's see, which one do I want to do first? Crack me up. Let's see. Oh, this one. Okay, so this woman is upset, and she's saying she's refusing to give her son the $150,000 he wants for his wedding unless his wife to be agrees to let her have her own guests. This woman wants to bring 8 people to the wedding, and the bride to be doesn't want her to invite those people because they're not people she wants there. They're just elderly people who this woman has been around. But she's supposed to spend $150,000 on the wedding. I'm looking at this going, okay, well, first of all, you're an idiot. Nobody needs $150,000 for a wedding. Are you out of your mind? These two are supposedly become doctors. They're going to have money. They've lived together 4 years. Hey, pay for your own damn wedding. But if you're going to pay for somebody's wedding, let it be a reasonable price. $150,000 is quite unnecessary, but it's especially unnecessary if your own daughter-in-law to be won't let you invite any guests of your own for that money. She's a piece of crap. And your son, who's going along with the program, he's a piece of crap. Just go like this. I'm done. You're on your own. See how easy these problems are to solve? Oh, then they probably won't let her see the grandkids. But they probably will do that to her anyway. If they won't let her bring her friends to the wedding, pretty sure she's going to have issues seeing the grandkids. So I just was like, wow, not so bright. And here's the other one before I go. This is Dear Abby. I'm a 50-year-old man who has been divorced twice. The last one was 2 years and 8 months ago. Last year, I met a wonderful woman, and we have been dating and building a beautiful relationship together. A month ago, I proposed to her and she accepted. Everything is going great, but I'm intimidated by all the men she has been with prior to us. How many would that be? She had a lot of toxic relationships, not even just lots of dates, but a lot of toxic relationships. So she makes really bad choices, sir. Really bad choices. Of course, you're on wife number 3, so maybe you don't make such good choices either. But she has had toxic relationships. Maybe you're toxic too. You ever think about that? All right. Now, she has also been sexually active with a lot of different men. How many did she tell you? I mean, why is she telling you? How many? Like 100? 200? What are we looking at? When we have sex, she tells me I'm not assertive enough and she wants me to be more aggressive. It makes me feel like she isn't happy with me sexually, and she will sooner or later look outside a relationship. I'm not sure what she means by aggressive, but apparently she's been in toxic relationships. So maybe she likes to have a really, really rough sex and it's just not normal, you think? And if you think she's making these demands and you can't accommodate her and she's has suffered from bad choices for years and years and years and you're run away, run now. Should I end this relationship? Yes. Yes. It's already not going well in bed. End it now. Jeez. I guess maybe he just wants wife number 3 for a year. I don't know, but it's just funny. I'm like, oh my God. Lord. What? Wait a minute. No, Pat, you're off on that one. Oh, which one? Oh, okay. That's okay. Wait a minute. I'm off on which one? I'm off on what one? I'm trying to figure it out which one I'm off on. Oh, is that what you think? Oh, okay. So Sarah is keeping track of lengths of all relationships. I don't know that he said he was keeping track of that. He just said she had a lot of relationships. I'm not sure. How many and then double that? What? I'm not sure what I was off on. All I'm saying is that if there really has been a situation, we're only hearing this from his point of view. That's why I said he might be the toxic one. Maybe that's why she's choosing him, because he's just one of the many that she makes bad choices with. But we don't know. But I'm just pointing out that if you think that she's had a string of toxic relationships and has slept with a whole lot of people that you feel uncomfortable about, and she's saying you're not satisfying her because you're not aggressive enough, those are 3 big red flags that say to me, this relationship is not a healthy one. So that's all. That's all. So, of course, tracking months of, who said, what did you look at? I mean, I don't think this is the same. You might be in a different Dear Abby. I don't know. But sometimes what happens is right in front of you, you identify, and I'm not saying he's telling the truth. Gosh knows, I don't know. And well, this is often true for an awful lot of guys, by the way. The men usually remarry with really short period of time, and women often go for decades after a divorce. That is the way it is. And I think it's because, well, first of all, they like sex. And secondly, and they want sex available and without having to go out and find it all the time and pay for it, and also because in a relation, a lot of guys feel that they want that comfort where she's there for them. And a lot of women, once they get out of a relationship, go, oh my God, getting into a relationship means having to then, it's a different, unfortunately, things are not necessarily equal in certain ways in male-female relationships anyway. It's the bride's day if she doesn't want the guest. But the mother-in-law is paying $150,000 to make this day, and she's not allowed to bring any of her friends. Come on now. I agree. If the bride doesn't want those people there, she should not accept $150,000 either. Go pay her for her own damn wedding. If that's what you want. If you want to say we want to have a small wedding, we just want parents and a few of our friends. We don't want all of mom's friends. That's fine. I don't object to that. Oh, I didn't tell you. That's why you don't get it, Michaela. The girl's inviting 400 people to the wedding. I left that out. It's Michaela who said this. Yeah, 400 people, Michaela, and her mother wants to have 8. She won't even see the 8 people. She's inviting 400. That's why it's a $150,000 wedding. It's huge. And mommy can't have 8 people. Now, again, I'm not saying, when you look at Dear Abby and Dear Ann and Dear all these other ones, we do not know if anybody's telling the truth. And we don't even know if they're making up the Dear Abby. Some people say sometimes they just we don't have a question this week. Let's just make up a crazy one. But I'm just using these as points to make when people say, how do we deal with certain things? So yeah, if you're paying $150,000 for a massive wedding where 400 people are being invited and you're not allowed to invite 8, I think that's a big sign that you shouldn't be paying for the wedding. And also, it's just ridiculous anyway. But yes, if it were just a small wedding, I totally agree with that, because she might just want a very intimate, small, wedding without a bunch of yappy women. Well, that's okay. Then, make sit around and agree to something tiny, but it wouldn't be okay to have your mother bring 8 people, but his mother couldn't bring 8 people. See, this is where people can be very irrational, and very selfish. And once you have somebody else paying the bill, kind of isn't your business anymore. You kind of have to, unless they're, you're all cooperative, everybody gets along and the person's paying for your wedding. Like when I paid for my daughter's wedding, but we sat down and it wasn't an expensive wedding, but it was beautiful. It was in a historic home, and we actually brought the food ourselves, and it was really sweet and wonderful. One of the friends actually played DJ, and it was great. It was a great wedding. I can't remember what it cost, $2,000 or $3,000 at the most. That was it. And we agreed. We sat down, my daughter and I sat down, and we agreed on how much. I said, well, I can't really afford this. May I give you a little extra for, a little honeymoon, but I don't want to, I'm not putting out like 10,000 on a wedding. And we agreed on this thing. And so we worked it out, because she's a rational, reasonable person. And so was I. But if she had sat there and go, well, Mom, you should be spending 20,000, I would have told her, yeah, not happening. And if she said, well, then you can't come to my wedding, I go, oh, okay. Be my guest in the loop. So, but it's just funny when you look at the way people deal with things. It's a lot of irrational stuff that goes on in people's minds. So anyway, that's going to be it for today. Glad you were here. I got some things off my chest as far as some of these crazy statements go out there in the internet world. And so I'll wrap up by saying it again. Do your own stuff. Do your own stuff. Dr. Grande does his own stuff. Ken Maines, I do disagree with him on the killer he, I think, foisted on the public, which I would still disagree with. But other than that, he does his own things. He doesn't steal from anybody. He does his own research. He does his own analysis. He doesn't use anybody else's videos. Neither does Dr. Grande, and quite a few other channels that I recommend don't steal stuff from other people. And I respect that. And all I'm saying is do your own work. And if you want to borrow something from somebody, you ask them. And if they say no, you don't use it. And if you say, hey, can I use this segment? And the person says, yes, go ahead. Then you can use it. It's just respect. That's it. You respect the other people for, the effort they put out to put together a video. And you don't just take it from them and throw it on your channel. And because you say a few words around it, call it okay. It's not. It's still theft. And I stand by that. So, well, I don't know. As far as I don't always agree with Dr. Grande, and I'm sure he doesn't always agree with me. I point out when I don't, and people point out when they don't agree with me. And sometimes people don't like my flippant attitude, as they call it. The fact I laugh during shows that are serious shows. And it's a personality thing. It's the way I do stuff. Some people love it and some people hate it. But at least it's his stuff. You know what I mean? And he worked his way to where he did years and years and years on YouTube. He's got over 1 million. I forgot what he's got now. He's got over 1 million followers. Am I jealous and bitter? No. It's impressive. He found a way that makes things work. I don't agree with him on some of his crime analyses. I think he's off on some of them, but I think sometimes he's funny. And I think sometimes his psychological analysis is on the mark. Okay. And Ken Maines, outside of the creepy killer dude that is still a psychopath and still a lying creepy killer dude and is not a profiler and shouldn't be presented as one, and it appalls me. The rest of his stuff I don't have an issue with. So I just say, I like a reasonable amount of ethics, and just do your own stuff. That's it. And if you want to, link to other people's channels. I do it all the time. I link and link and link, and people can go there and see. And they could have put 1 or 2 minutes of my stuff in there and then linked the rest of it, and I would have been fine. But when you work really hard and you just put out your video, and then the next day you get up there and you see yourself for almost an hour or two of your own stuff on somebody else's channel, it pisses you off. And if they want to call that I'm petty, go ahead. I'll stand by that. So, anyway, and to say we all have different tastes. We do. And there's nothing wrong with watching a number of different shows, but I do recommend against the gossip and channel, the gossip shows, and the ones who present themselves as knowing stuff when they're not in the field, but pretend that they do. And just, it's the grifter shows that put in just every day is a bunch of gossip and using other people's stuff. I just recommend against that. I know some people think they're amusing and fun and all that stuff. And a lot of times they smile a lot and they're real cheerful and they're like, they just seem, and people fall for that because people who are good manipulators also know how to pretend they're always the victim and that they're really nice and sweet. And I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. Okay. just be careful of that stuff. Find good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff on YouTube besides me. And so please go and enjoy that and learn. Someplace where you're learning something is always important to me, where you really learn something, not just not just people mocking other people constantly and telling, and doing 50 shows on a case and all full of wrong facts. That's not learning. It's just, I say the Nicola Bulley thing is just going on and on and on. And somebody just said that the Idaho thing is going crazy with a whole bunch of nonsense. I haven't talked about Idaho because there's nothing to talk about at this point until this trial. What else have I got to say? But people will push all these weird ass theories out there because it gets people. They're just, everybody jumping in on it, and it's so exciting. Okay, yeah, just doesn't make me happy. Anyway, thank you all for being here. And yes, there are great teachers out there, and it's important to. I do like it when people do visit other channels and get different viewpoints. There's nothing wrong with that because, especially if the person is doing it in a way where they're showing how they're analyzing things, how they're coming to the conclusions, because you learn from that, even if it's different from somebody else's, including myself. And I don't object to that. I would hate to think that there's only one person that can ever teach anybody. That's the problem with profiling. The FBI has claimed for years that they're the only people who can, only their profilers are any good. Like no other profiler can exist out there if they weren't with the FBI. It's nonsense. And it's sad. So, be willing, as long as the person can explain things well, and as long as they're clear, honest, and explain things. I'm big into the explanation because when people don't explain, then to me, if they're just pronouncing, some people said, well, Pat, you should get this over in 10 minutes. What the hell? You just keep jabbering on. Sort of do. But anyway, they want me just to give my conclusion. They don't want me to explain the conclusion. They just want me to give the conclusion. I'm like, what's the point? Some people will say, oh, great conclusion. Other people will say, terrible conclusion. How does that help anybody if I don't explain where the conclusion came from? That to me is pointless. And I don't want to run a channel that I just give pronouncements. It seems pointless to me. So anyway, I'll see you on, let me see, have I got a response back from Joe? Because I may be doing the boxing one. Because we had the technical problems last time. And let me see if Joe's going to do it. Wait a minute, where's my social? There it is. See if he's responded back. No, I haven't heard back yet. We're trying for Friday, but we'll see if it happens. And so I'm having the doubleheader this weekend. Not sure if it's Saturday or Sunday, but I'm doing 2 different cases of 2 people who ran away and disappeared and ended up dead. And what happened to them. One is Tiffany Valiente, and the other one is a Colombian case. His name is Luis Colmenares, I think it is. I'm doing this off the top of my head. And both of them young people, and both really sad cases, but very similar in certain ways, which is why I wanted to do both of them. So join me for that. So Yeah. Anyway, so I hope to see you. If we do it on Friday, I hope to see you on Friday. And then on this weekend, the double cases of these two young people who disappeared and didn't end up well. See you then. Bye.